Wonderful. Well, Yolanda, I am so excited to welcome you. That we're doing a live from the L&D Lounge at the Career Growth Summit. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's awesome. It is awesome. Well, we had a couple of conversations, and I have loved getting to know you and the journey that you have taken. So really excited. GLDC, shout out here, and the wonderful L&D Cares Group, and you also during that time to kind of say, what's the contribution I want to make? What can we do? And through your podcast, you have really lifted up the conversation as well as the connection between not only leaders in learning, but also in the other areas around how do we connect and really foster great talent growth. So it's wonderful to have you as part of the L&D Cares Career Growth Summit. Middle of strangeness, as we call this weird September.
Oh, goodness.
The transitions. Yeah.
Wonderful. It's been a pleasure getting to meet you as well. You know, optimistic about the next several months as we move kind of more so out of this pandemic. You know, it was really great at the beginning of the pandemic around March or April to sit down with John Hinchcliffe. And I was like, who's this guy over here out of the UK doing this community? And we both didn't realize it, but we were going after the same goal, which is this lifting up of other people and really fostering this talent, right, that we saw in the workplace that was at home, right, like during the lockdown. And so I think it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful what you all are doing. I'm a champion. I cheerlead you all. You're out of Germany. He's out of the UK. So we have a little bit of a different time zones there, but I just love how we're able to support one another.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's, you know, I think the area of learning and talent, I always like to say that as well, because I'm all about the full scope, to say, how are we enabling people's, empowering their potential, their impact, and really looking at, you know, the future of work doesn't have to be scary. It has to be that piece of how do we get into that wobble zone of learning as a brave space to experiment. And so starting with us and learning is a wonderful place to be starting.
Exactly. We have to start with ourselves. And I believe when you think about leadership development, you always have to start with the leader within, that self-development piece. And then you can move to how you create change and how you influence others. But if you yourself don't see yourself as a leader, and if you yourself are not acting like a leader, right? And you're not someone that other people even should model or kind of follow, then you have kind of no business thinking about influencing other people. You have to start with yourself and then go up, right?
I could not agree more. I could not agree more. So when we were talking on Friday, we were talking about the L&D Cares and the career growth stream. So are there any questions that you have that, you know, you say for your listeners, this would be really something that they would be interested in, and where you would like to dig in a little bit deeper?
Yeah, you know, I think when, you know, there's been this running conversation, Liz, about just the career development growth and how you get to the place where you want to arrive, right? And I think a lot of us in this performance-driven culture, at least here in the US, I can't speak for, I've lived in France briefly, so I'm not going to speak for how Europe and all that, it's a little different there. But I know here it's a very like fast-driven and based on your region, very, very fast pace, you know. So I just be curious, what's going to be your focus? I'm very curious. What's the focus for this upcoming week?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things around action bias that I think everywhere. It's particularly this challenge of the pandemic of what do we need to do? Oh, okay, we need everybody away from the offices. We need everybody to come back from the offices. We don't know if you're going to be in the office. So this aspect, that's why we called it, it's the middle of the strangeness, is that we're constantly getting strange at times conflicting messages out of this action bias, rather than taking that step back to saying, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? What would be important? What are the barriers, and what can we do here? And so this is why the L&D Cares Career Growth Summit is called the middle of strangeness, is because we actualize that for all of us, none of us have clarity in this time of extreme paradox and ambiguity. And so people are asking themselves, okay, I'm exhausted on the one hand. On the other hand, I don't know why I'm exhausted. How do I deal with all of these conflicting priorities? And how do I continue to grow, and really taking that pause? And so this is why we said we want to do the L&D Cares Career Growth Summit a little bit differently, because here we are all in the mix. So the Career Growth Summit is a makeup of HR tech vendors. It is talent acquisition specialists, recruiters. It is L&D and talent.
Nice.
Be you in a job or out of a job as a consultant, it's our, it's researchers, and because we're all coming together to say, what can we do to co-create around career development? Because quite often, I know for me, I had my talent management groups that I was part of, I had my learning groups, and I had my employer branding groups, and never twain shall meet. And HR had their different ones, and it's really strange. And so here, that crossover, and we've been doing that for the last couple of summits to really create an understanding around career growth. And then this one, because we have those learning journeys, we said, okay, let's mix it up. What do we have? What do we have in terms of expertise in this group? We have a heck of a lot of instructional designers. We have a heck of a lot of people out of L&D and talent. Let's flip the switch on people are tired of being talked at, and they want to be talked with. So how can we utilize our skills as great workshop developers and create different workshops around, career resilience? How can we create great workshops about empowerment league or learning in the mix? So the idea is so funny. You got it exactly. And the idea is that each of us experiences it in a workshop. And so to be able to enable ourselves as we go back to our teams, our groups, even our friends and our organizations, to be able to foster discussions because of what people have gone through in terms of workshops in this summit. So
sounds like a cool summit. I'm really excited. I think what I'm excited the most about is flipping things on their head. I just, while I'm not, a dinosaur, and I haven't been in this field, right, learning development, talent development forever, I think it's easy to kind of get bored, right? Like sometimes I say to folk, like, I can do ID in my sleep. Like it's not a thing where I'm arrogant. It's just, I know the process. I've done, modules in my, I've done the whole gamut. And I think for me, where I wanted to like say, how can I do something differently, came out of not just boredom, but feeling like we all have become numb. So when I came across you via John Hinchcliffe, I came across you and your work with L&D Cares. And he said, I think he told me about you before you actually did L&D Cares. He was like, well, I'm thinking about this. I'm going to work with this woman and this team. And I just love the fact that you were focusing not just on like the topics, you know what I mean? A lot of people are like, this topic and this high profile guest speaker. And it's like, that is the central focus. And you were thinking about the workshop experience, which we've all been talking about learner engagement. You want to engage the person. You need to think about how you're doing it, not just all these high profile speakers and whatnot. So I'm curious what that experience is going to look like. It seems like this platform is super neat. I've never used AirMeet before. How are we going to engage and interact? How is everyone going to kind of co-create like you're talking about?
Oh, I love it. Oh, thank you, Yolanda. Yeah, no, I totally agree. So we are all about building confidence while building competence. And the best way to do that is to do it, to learn it. So you are exactly right. So we're going to be doing basically, so AirMeet was built as a social platform. So it has this area called Table Talks, and that's what we'll be using for our breakout sessions. And I always like to say it's kind of like a Marriott in old school, you know, like we used to actually go places, and then there would be a workshop, and then a workshop would have different table cards as to what would be discussed there.
Yep.
And then another workshop would start, and then there would be new table topics. So that's the brilliance. I know, right? I know. Because oftentimes the best conversations that one would have at a conference were the ones that happened during a break, or where you were able to really connect with someone. So, so that's really important to us. So we'll be doing a lot of in sessions. So the idea is, yes, there will be learning, there will be content, but it's always going to be, and each session leader has integrated interaction and learning, either via chat, via polls, via speed networking, via the breakout sessions. So each of our session leaders is doing it slightly differently, but I can tell you, Yolanda, it's going to be a really fun mix, because there's a lot of creativity that is now at our fingertips, where we can get that interaction and that connection. And we responded very specifically. We asked people in front of this L&D Care Summit, what do you like from the previous summits? What do you want in this aspect? And this really goes back into what what the research is saying, is like people are lonely. They are lonely. Yes. And this has been a really, really tough pandemic in terms of how are we fostering true connection of, I see you. I see you for who you are, not your title, not for what task I want you to drive, but this aspect of respecting one another and creating that space and time. Because we are so stressed, because we are all so vulnerable. So for us, that's really taken a key space in this. So there will be a lot of table talks. There's also one-on-ones. Anyone can message anybody on the platform, make out some time. And it's really also those pieces that we know people are working. You're on your lunch break, for example.
I'm on my lunch break.
And we know that. And because so many of us are in that mix, we want people to drop in and drop out as they can and show up as who they are. So people can put their own schedules together, where they go on the schedule and say, okay, remind me. And then it will send them a link when it starts. And then you are in that workshop and you are co-creating basically what comes out of it. And so our hope is that, as we connect to learn and we connect to grow, this is just one point of time in that space. And so we really welcome anybody who is interested in career growth around saying, okay, hey, how do I deal with this workplace toxicity? How do I deal with, I don't feel like I have the respect I deserve and need at my workplace? How am I looking at the burning platform of empowerment that has affected, so many women and in L&D and Talent, and particularly women of color being disproportionately affected? And it's not part of the conversation. Okay, it needs to be. And so we're going to be, and then on the third day, learning in the mix. So taking play to then saying connected thinking and competence. And what are some of the examples, for example, Brandon Carson, about doing away with degree requirements and really understanding what does it take to do a job? Because oftentimes people self-edit out of opportunities because they're like, oh, I don't have that tick box.
Right.
And so as we look to rethinking and reframing our careers, also reframing some of the paradigms as to what does good look like. So it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited.
The idea that you mentioned about reframing it. When I first got started and was making the transition from being an elementary teacher in K-12 to learning and development, people would often confuse the two, that just paradigm shift, that reframing. Yeah. And I really had to lay it all out for them. Yes, I was a teacher, but I have competence in this area, and here's why. And so I think that that word is just really important for people, because I think sometimes we leave it up to the recruiter to figure it all out and connect the dots. And I think I've seen, I've done some volunteer work with resumes and stuff. And I'm like, sometimes my head is like hurting because people think, I'm like, can you connect that dot? Do you think someone's going to have even 5 minutes to figure out why you think your analytical problem solving abilities as a teacher are going to connect to your work as an ISP? Like, oh my gosh, you have to connect the dots.
You have to connect the dots. And it's funny. So our friends, Laura Coulter and Nikki Porter, are going to be doing a session on K-12 to corporate learning, the culture shock.
Good.
And it's really true around how do we also look at our expertise. Quite often we think about the things we can't do rather than, hey, let's take some time thinking about what are we actually really good at. And oftentimes it's getting the language of those various groups a little bit understood.
That's it. Well, I mean, this is really, I'm excited. I won't be able to attend a great deal of it, but I look forward to the recordings and popping in and out where I can. I think the most important thing for me is that you're inspiring people in the midst of the pandemic. And that's what got me last year. I really was, when I first started to create the L&D Lounge, I was a learning team of one. I was working at home in the same office I've been in for 18 months. And I just felt isolated. And I created the L&D Lounge because I'm a talker. I'm a people person. So I was like, let's get a whole bunch of folk together and start. And that's how it all began. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which community you belong to. And I'm a very strong component of find a community that's going to be a best fit for you in your time zone. John was doing these coffee chats and I could never make these Q&As. And I think I attended one. But that was right around the same time I was doing the L&D Lounge. But I think what I liked best about all of these different spaces is that they were inclusive. I want to see more diverse voices in learning and development. And I haven't always, if I'm frank, seen that. And so now that I'm given platforms, to talk, I'm encouraging and promoting that. And I know on Friday we talked about being an ally. And I think one of the things that means is inviting, if you have a place of power or privilege, inviting people of color, no matter what their role, seniority or not, inviting them to speak on your podcast, inviting them to speak as a part of your conference. Can you share an article? Just finding ways to involve more people of color. Because if you look across your panel and you only have one black, my favorite thing is the one token black person. One person of color. I want to be frank and say, please think about people who are from Asian or Pacific Islander descent, who are Latin, not just black person, white person on your panel. So, having more diversity across the board. And so I appreciate you, Liz, for giving me the opportunity to even have this platform today on AirMeet. I was so delighted when you're like, hey, do you want to jump on? Because I think you are amplifying my voice. And you are not only amplifying my voice, but other women of color. So I appreciate you for that. And I appreciate all of what you're doing. And this is free. So I know what free means. Free means a lot of work for nothing. But you do get a lot of messages and thank yous and all that. So this has been a really great chat. And I'm just looking forward to all that's to come down the pipe from you guys in the next, I don't know, are you doing this again? Are you doing this annually?
We're going to figure out what that next iteration is. So we're always looking to learn and grow. And so this is our third one. It's definitely different. And so what comes next is that aspect of what's in the pie. And I really appreciate you saying that, Yolanda. I think, one of the things, back behind one of my New Year's resolutions was welcome into the awesome. How can we welcome more voices into the awesomeness? There's so much to learn. There's so many experiments that are being run. There are so many beautiful people out there looking and getting that gumption up and saying, how can we get our voices? So, I couldn't agree more.
Well, thanks for this live. I can't even say thanks for joining from the L&D Lounge because I'm joining from L&D Cares, the L&D Cares Summit. This is going to be a fun episode. I can't wait for my listeners to hear this. It kind of feels like I'm a part of the conference, but we're a day out. So tell us, how should we register? We still have time, yeah?
We still have time. Exactly. I love it. Yes. Thank you. Yes. So people can register. It's probably the easiest if they just go to the L&D Cares site on LinkedIn. You'll see it under the event, and then you can just go in directly, and you are on AirMeet. You need to register. All you do is you give an email, and that makes sure that, if you like say, okay, what's my schedule, et cetera, you can get in. That's kind of the point, is you need to be actually being able to access AirMeet. And so that's our piece. So yeah. So go to the LinkedIn site, and otherwise in the session notes, sorry, sometimes I have a little bit of memory. We will have the link, and we look forward, and it's of course going to be on all of our feeds. We're going to be posting to Instagram, to L&D, and to
Love it.
Love it. Awesome.
All right. Thank you for being with me today, and thank you for inviting me to your platform.
I love it. Thank you, Yolanda. Thanks so much for coming to the L&D Cares the night before CGS. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.